From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Hickson. Usually you hear literally from Hector Bozon, my co-host, over the telephone airwaves. Hector's actually in school right now, so he's going to be joining us in about a half an hour after he takes a break from classes. So in the meantime, I'm going to let you know that if there is a sports story that you want us to know about, then you can let us know, and we can tell you all about it. So you can contact us through Facebook, Twitter, and we also have all of our reruns on YouTube. And you can also contact us on Instagram and Snapchat. So, in the meantime, we're going to spend, or in this case, I'm going to spend the next half hour with you guys talking a whole bunch of stuff. We haven't talked a lot of college sports lately, and since we just started the month of March, this is about the time where the NCAA tournament gets really, really close. And a lot of teams that are on the bubble. Speaking of bubble, I just had some bubble team right now. It was so good. This is the time of the season where a lot of teams that are on the bubble are trying to position themselves into a little bit better standing with the NCAA tournament committee to try and get one of those 68 slots and try and avoid one of those 32 slots in the NIT or one of the slots reserved for the College Basketball Invitational or the CollegeInsider.com tournament. The NCAAs is where it is all at right now. And at last check, Kansas was the number one ranked team in the country thanks to such a brilliant road victory against Baylor about a couple of weeks ago. And at this rate, I don't see Kansas really being beaten right now. They've got one of the top players in the country, Udoka Azubuike, who is a senior and has really gotten 4 years of polish to his game. So now it's gotten to the point where maybe he could be a lower round lottery pick if he can really step up his game during the tournament. Other teams to watch for this NCAA tournament, I would look out for Duke. I mean, Duke's always a threat around this time of year. The one team to watch for right now is definitely Gonzaga. They've been so well coached by Mark Few, plus they're so physical on the interior that they really give a lot of teams problems. So look out for Gonzaga to be a potential Final Four candidate down the road. A team that's been talked about, which I think might be a little overlooked for the upcoming tournament, is Florida State. Florida State has been doing it with a transition game and with really, really, really good guard play. So look out for Florida State to possibly be one of those teams that could challenge for a spot in the Final Four. Right now, the single biggest disappointment of all has to be North Carolina. What happened to them is all I can ask. The only bright spot has been their potential lottery pick, Cole Anthony, who also happens to be Greg Anthony's son. There's a strong possibility that he could be maybe a top 5 to top 10 pick in the upcoming draft. And North Carolina could really use him for next season. It'll be interesting to see what their 2020 draft class is going to be like, because the bottom just dropped out for them, and it does not look like it's going to recover anytime soon. Other teams to watch for, I see Kentucky's made its way back to prominence again. They wound up regaining the lead in the Southeastern Conference. Not sure if they could be a Final Four team, but I think they have enough athleticism to give some people a lot of problems maybe on their way to the Sweet 16 or maybe the Elite Eight. I would not rule them out as a Final Four pick, though, because you know anything about Coach Calipari and his teams, they always come up with a way to try and out-hustle and out-muscle the guys, especially on the low post. So let's see what the guys over at Kentucky can do this time. Now, as far as what's going on locally, St. John's has really slumped in Big East Conference play during the majority of the season, but at least they were able to get themselves a big win against a really big-time opponent in Creighton yesterday. So now St. John's is a game over 500, and with 2 games left in the season, all they can do is try to keep themselves afloat for some kind of tournament. Maybe the NIT. I doubt they'll do the College Insider or college basketball in invitational tournaments, because those latter 2 tournaments require the schools to pay money to get their way in. So let's see exactly what St. John's does to try and end the season. Seton Hall has really held their own for the majority of the season. And of course, that's made possible by having a really good senior in Miles Powell. And he's also had a really good supporting cast to go with him. There's been the kid Mamu, the big kid, Mamushkavili from Europe, who's had a very solid season. Gerald McKnight, who's been steady at point guard. So let's see what Seton Hall can do in the tournament this time. We already know they have 2 games left in the year, and one of them is against Villanova at home on senior night. So you know that Seton Hall is going to come out with a big emotional challenge in this game to try and send their seniors off with a victory. And if they can do that, then they'll get that number 1 seed in the Big East tournament, which starts next week at the Garden. One thing that's been missing about the state of the Big East is the fact that Connecticut is going to be moving back to the Big East from the American Athletic Conference next season. This is probably the biggest shot in the arm that the newly reconstructed Big East needed since they lost all of those schools 6 or 7 years ago. Now, UConn has had a really tough time these last 3 or 4 years. Let's see what they could do in their new home, which used to be their old home, starting next year. And also going on in the local circuit, the Atlantic 10 Conference is going to have their tournament in Brooklyn once again for the 2nd straight year, which means the Barclays Center is going to be hosting the tournament. Right now, Dayton is undefeated in the tournament, and they've already won the A10 regular season title. I think it's just a matter of time before Dayton gets themselves a tournament title and a really high seeding in the NCAAs. Dayton's had a phenomenal year. So let's see how Dayton can do in the big tournament, which is going to be coming up. For the record, they're going to determine the 68 teams in the NCAA tournament exactly 1 week from, I think, 1 week from Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see exactly how everything plans out. As far as all of these bubble teams, there's probably more teams that are teeter-tottering between elimination and the NCAAs this year than in years past. You've got teams like Rhode Island and Providence, other teams such as maybe Notre Dame, maybe Syracuse, probably UCLA probably is the biggest bubble team that's out there, because right now they're the regular season champion If the Pac-12 tournament were to start today, UCLA would be the regular season champion. And what about the job that Mick Cronin has done for the Bruins? He left Cincinnati, his hometown job, last year to try and take the UCLA job, and he has practically waved a magic wand and turned things around in the span of a year. Think what would happen if UCLA were to win that regular season title and then take the conference tournament. My guess is that Mick Cronin should be considered for Coach of the Year. After what he has done with that school, you've got to consider him for some kind of prominent figure job, or some kind of prominent figure award, to be exact. Now, let's turn our attention from college basketball to the NBA right now. Just last night, I saw the end of that Lakers versus Pelicans game. If only Zion Williamson had stayed healthy for one whole season, the New Orleans Pelicans probably would have been a playoff team. But now, the best they could do is where their standing is right now, which is 9th place. At least Williamson has been able to bring them back a little bit further. Not only that, but the other teams from 10th place on down are just dreadful. And the Pelicans have been able to take advantage of that, and they wound up placing themselves pretty close to the Memphis Grizzlies for that 8th spot in the Western Conference playoff race. And if he had stayed healthy for a full season, Zion Williamson would have been the Rookie of the Year. But right now, it's Ja Morant who's going to be the Rookie of the Year. He's been there since the very beginning, and he has been dynamic this season. Now, if only he had a better cast of characters to try and work with, Memphis probably would have reached 40 wins this season. Now, last night I saw Lakers versus Pelicans, and once again, we wound up seeing why LeBron James is still the king of the court in this game. He wound up hitting a huge three, which gave the Lakers a little bit more of a cushion down the stretch of the game. And thanks to some poor free throw shooting from the Pelicans, the Lakers wound up pulling away and won by double digits. All this talk that the Lakers are not as good as the Los Angeles Clippers. Granted, the Clippers have won the first 2 meetings against them, but let's see what the next 2 meetings between these 2 City of Angels teams plays out. Because you look at them roster by roster, the Lakers, of course, have LeBron and Anthony Davis. It's been Anthony Davis who's been probably their best player all season. LeBron has simply been a principal actor, if you will, in this movie that has been the Lakers season. And what about the kid Alex Caruso, a guy who practically was a nomad going from one team to another, and then he finally makes his way onto a Lakers roster, and he becomes probably one of their 5 best players right now. Now, as far as the rest of the Eastern Conference, Denver's had a really good season, thanks to Nikola Jokic, and of course Jamal Murray, who's been a really solid player at point guard. Other than that, you've got the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George and Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams, who's a 6th man du jour. Other than that, the Rockets have played reasonably well this season. The Mavericks have been very good this year, thanks to Luka Doncic and, of course, Kristaps Porzingis, that 1-2 combo that's been just terrorizing teams for the majority of the season. Unfortunately, they've stumbled a little bit because they've lost some games that, quite frankly, they never should have lost in the first place. Now, as far as the Eastern Conference is concerned, I think it's safe to say Milwaukee is going to run away with the regular season title. 50 wins right now, and they just cannot be stopped whatsoever. I'm curious to see what they do in a playoff series. I would think that they would be good enough to get to the Eastern Conference Finals right now, but who's going to be their opponent in the Eastern Conference Finals? Is it going to be Toronto once again, the same Toronto team that upset them in last year's conference finals? Is it going to be Philly, or is it going to be Boston? You know what? Boston has played well this year. They've gotten great seasons from Jason Tatum and also Gordon Hayward. But at the same time, they've wound up losing games against some of the top teams in the league. Just the other night, the Celtics wound up losing to the Houston Rockets at home. These are the kinds of games that the Celtics have to prove themselves when it comes to going up against a really, really dangerous opponent like Houston. And the Celtics just did not get the job done. Now, as far as the rest of the Eastern Conference is concerned, Toronto has more than held their own, thanks to Kyle Lowry. Boston has more than held their own. Philly has been very up and down this season, mostly because Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons have both been in and out of the lineup because of injuries. Ben Simmons is the most problematic right now because of his back injury. They are going to really miss him for these next 2 weeks. Now, as far as the rest of the Eastern Conference, look out for Indiana. Now that they have Victor Oladipo back, the Pacers are going to be so dangerous in that half-court game that I'm not really sure who can match up well with them. As far as numbers 6, 7, and 8, numbers 6, 7, and 8, I can tell you right now, I'm not really sure if they would even make the playoffs in the Western Conference, if you were to ask me. Right now, it's Miami, Orlando, and the Brooklyn Nets. And the Nets have been in a major, major slump since the All-Star break. And quite frankly, I worry if they're even going to survive March and April, much less clinch a playoff spot, because there have been times when they've gotten their brains beaten out really badly. And some of the games that they were close in, like the overtime loss to Philly, those were games that could have been won if they had just made another shot here or two, or gotten another rebound here or two, or words to that effect. As far as that East is concerned, Miami has looked really, really good by each game. Jimmy Butler, of course, has been the guy who's taken control of the team on the court and in the locker room. Him and his high-maintenance personality. Don't be surprised if you see the Heat pull off a major upset in a first-round series. So right now, you've got, in no particular order, Milwaukee, which leads the East. Toronto, well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Miami has taken over second place in the Eastern Conference. Then there's Toronto, then there's Philly, then there's Boston, and then Indiana, and then after that, that's where the have-nots come in, which would be the Nets and the Magic. After that, none of those teams are even deserving, much less to be mentioned in a particular playoff race. Washington, Detroit, that other team that resides in New York, not named the Nets, and also Atlanta and Cleveland and Chicago. They've all been a cruel joke this season. And speaking of that other team that lives in the New York area, There have been suddenly rumors about one Tom Thibodeau possibly returning to coaching by taking the Knicks job. All I can say is, should anybody even care at this point what that sorry-ass franchise does just to try and sell papers? It's gotten to the point where they're practically an afterthought, and they're practically irrelevant in this town. So why should I even go on any further to talk about them? Now, as far as baseball is concerned, they just started the preseason, and already the Yankees have come up with one major injury, which is all but killed their World Series title hopes. And that's the fact that two to be exact. One, James Paxton had to undergo an emergency surgery to remove a cyst. So he's going to be out until about May or so. But then there was the big injury, Luis Severino. He has to undergo Tommy John surgery. So now he's gone all of this season and part of next season. And this all started with some tightness in his pitching forearm. When you hear the words tightness and forearm in the same sentence, you know that's got to be bad. So now the Yankees are down 3. They're down 2-3 starters in their rotation. Now they've got Tanaka. Now they've got J-Happ. And now that they have Garrett Cole. So it's Cole, Happ, and Tanaka that make up their 3 healthy starters right now. It's a good thing that Garrett Cole pitched that scoreless inning when he did the other day, because if not, then it really would have been time to sound the alarm. Other than that, the Yankees also have had problems with Giancarlo Stanton and his injuries. They're hoping that he won't need that much time to try and rehab. So it's a good thing that it's only March, because if not, then the Yankees would be down a designated hitter too. And there's also the issue of Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge has also been hurt. So hopefully those 2 sluggers will not need that much time to try and rehab. That way they could be back in time for the season opener against Baltimore. Now, as far as the Mets are concerned, there's been differing opinions about exactly what the Mets' prospects are this season. All I can say is this: their starting pitching is really powerful, but the bullpen still needs work. I mean, you saw what happened with Edwin Diaz when he made his relief appearance in a game recently. He still got his bell rung. So now it's gotten to the point where the Mets have to worry about their main closer, their other closer, and who's going to be joining them to back up in that reliever's role. As far as the batting order is concerned, infield looks really good so far, if you ask me. It looks like Robinson Cano is back at full strength, so he's going to be the second baseman. Pete Alonso looks like he's at full strength as well, so he's going to be the first baseman. Ahmed Rosario is going to be the shortstop. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Jeff McNeil is going to be taking the majority of the time as the third baseman. And of course, Yoenis Cespedes is supposed to be coming back soon. He could be either the left fielder or the center fielder. At this rate in time, I think he could be the left fielder. So let's see how things play out for him. And then, of course, there's Brandon Nimmo playing center field and Michael Conforto playing right field. And behind the plate for them is going to be Wilson Ramos. So it looks like the Mets have a pretty reasonable batting order 1 through 9. I would like to see them maybe get another slugger, maybe to play center field or to move Cespedes to center field, and maybe they might be able to play left. But overall, the Mets look pretty decent this season. Not to say that they'll be a playoff team or anything, but maybe if they were to pick up where they left off last September, when they really went on to make a big run, maybe they might be able to challenge some teams this season. Although I will say this, that Eastern Division is going to look really strong. Atlanta looks terrific. Philadelphia looks much more strong. In spite of the fact that they lost Anthony Rendon, Washington still looks to be a force to be reckoned with, mostly because of their pitching. So right now, that is a 4 to 5 team race for that Eastern Division title. Florida stinks. As far as the Central Division is concerned, the Cardinals lost a lot when they wound up losing Michael Wacha. Now, let's see what they can do to try and replace him for this year. Well, I will say this, though. St. Louis is still going to be strong. Milwaukee is going to look really strong this season. Chicago is a major wild card in this one. You don't really know what's going to happen with them. There were rumors that they might trade Chris Bryant, but now we don't really know what decisions are going to be made regarding Chris Bryant this season. They still have some good hitting, though, and the pitching staff looks rather solid. So I would say they would be a 80 to 85 win team this year, so let's see what happens with them. Cincinnati, believe it or not, is going to be much better, mostly because of their pitching. So let's see how their hitting pans out. Pittsburgh might be the bottom feeder of the group, so you can pretty much count them out. As far as the Western Division, all signs point to the Dodgers. They have got everything going for them, from pitching to hitting. And the manager, Dave Roberts, who I think has done a much better job than people give him credit for. I know things have been pretty tough for him, what with the fan base calling for his head and everything else, but he's done a much better job than people give him credit for. So I think the Dodgers run away with the Western Division. After that, San Francisco's in rebuilding mode. San Diego's in rebuilding mode. Arizona, I think, is going to be a little bit better. Colorado, I really don't know what to make of the Rockies because there's still the issue of what they're going to do with Nolan Arenado. Are they going to trade him or are they going to keep him? We're going to have to wait and see. So that's going to be the only thing to worry about with the Rockies this season. What's going to be with Nolan Arenado? Anyway, let's talk a little hockey for a bit. We thought for sure that things were going well with the Rangers, but then they have their home and home with the Flyers, and they wind up laying a complete and utter goose egg. They wound up getting swept of that home and home by the Flyers, and now they're back to square one. And the Islanders have suddenly slumped at the wrong time. And what about the New Jersey Devils? The Devils have actually played some decent hockey in the last few weeks. Now, whether that translates to a playoff spot, I still don't think so. But anything is possible. Some really strange things have happened. We're at the quarter mark of the season, the 3/4 mark of the season in the NHL. So it's looking more and more like we're going to have some really exciting races down the stretch, not just in each conference, but for positioning for the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs. As far as football is concerned, they just got done with the scouting combine at Indianapolis, and there were their share of winners and losers as well. I couldn't really tell you one way or another who was the winner or the loser in this game. I only checked it out in passing, but we do know that this is going to lead to a lot of talk as far as who should be taking what prospect when the draft takes place around April or so. By the way, let me just say hello and thanks once again to Kenny Graham, who's on the other side of the glass. He's been helping us out. He's giving us the thumbs up right now. Anyway, just recently, ESPN did this outstanding story. It wasn't a 30 for 30, but it was part of the ESPN Films group of projects that they make. They made this outstanding story about Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade, as you know, retired a year ago from the NBA. Well, recently, he's basically been playing the role of dad to his 4 children with his new wife, actress Gabrielle Union Wade. So, the story started, as with all stories involving superstar athletes or any people in the public eye, from the very beginning. And pretty much the story started about with Wade's trials and tribulations in Chicago and how he one time had a gun pointed at his head by a Chicago cop, and also had 2 parents that were in and out of his life. So, if I'm not mistaken, Kenny, I think we got Hector on. Oh, no? All right. Hector's supposed to be calling in any moment now, so hopefully he'll be able to join us. So anyway, the story continued with Wade having 2 parents that were in and out of his life, and how he used basketball to try and get out of whatever doldrums that he was in emotionally and personally. And then he wound up being one of Chicago's best players, and then after that, wound up getting himself a scholarship to Marquette University, and after redshirting a year, he played for a couple of years, led them to the Final Four, and then the next thing we knew, he wound up being drafted by the Heat, won 3 titles, including 2 with LeBron, and then achieved a dream for about a year when he played for the Bulls, and then split his final year and a half between the Cavaliers and the Heat again. It's gotten to the point where he became such an idolized figure in South Florida that they changed the name of the county where Miami is located, which is Dade County, to Wade County. Whether that's true or not, I'm not really sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was, because he was that iconic a figure in his adopted hometown of Miami. And coming up, I think this summer, there's going to be this really intriguing story about the final year of the Michael Jordan Bulls team from 1997-98. The same team that had 2 three-peats in the span of 8 years, all of which occurred under Phil Jackson, all of which had Michael and Scottie Pippen on the roster. So I think you might want to watch for that when it hits ABC and ESPN in July. Now, let's see, what else can we talk about here? Oh, just last night I was watching a little bit of the XFL. I was watching the Houston versus Dallas game, and then after that I was watching Washington versus Tampa. And gotta admit, some of the play in this league has been pretty decent. And I love the kickoffs that they do to start the game, where they have each line separated between the 30 and the 40-yard line, and they don't move until the ball is fielded by the return man. That is one thing that the NFL definitely has to try and think about in order to prevent less injuries during kickoffs in a game. The other thing that I like is the extra points. Instead of kicking an extra point, you have them go for either 1, 2, or 3. That's a brilliant, brilliant idea. If they want to go for a point, they'll go for it from the 1-yard line. If they want to go for 2, they'll go for it from the 5-yard line. And if they want to go for 3, they'll go for it from the 10-yard line. These are just brilliant, quirky yet brilliant rules that the XFL has come up with for the return back after 19 years away. And just recently, I've been catching a little bit of wrestling. We haven't been talking a lot of wrestling on this program, to be quite honest with you. So recently, I've been watching a lot of what's going on in the NWA. These guys are doing it old school. They're actually pre-recording their matches at the old GPB studios in Atlanta, where they used to have Saturday Night Championship Wrestling when it was on TBS all those years ago. It was wonderful. And I'm also starting to love the fact that they brought back the old Crockett Cup tournament, which was the tournament that usually goes to the best tag team in the NWA. And I think their women's division has started to take up shape a little bit. And they're featuring more stars. They're bringing in some new people. Some of these new people have shown a lot of talent. Even some of the jobbers that they have been showing a little bit of promise as well. So if you want to see something fresh, definitely check out the NWA, because these guys really bring something to the table every single time. And the star power that they have in there has been phenomenal. You've got William Patrick Corgan, yes, Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, the same guy that used to run TNA back in the day. He is now not only the executive producer, he's also practically the company's president. And there's also Nick Aldis, who used to spend a little bit of time in TNA. He now is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And my guess is he's probably one of the lead bookers as well, because if you see him in interviews, he practically calls a lot of the shots that's going on in the squared circle and outside the squared circle. There's also Ricky Starks, who's the World Television Champion. James Storm, another former TNA cast-off. There's also Eli Drake, who I think has a really, really strong persona. And I mentioned that their women's division has been very, very solid. Melina has come back to the game after a long layoff, and also spending a little time in the independent circuit. Melina is now challenging for the NWA title. There's a wrestler named Thunder Rosa, who also happens to be an MMA fighter. She's now the NWA Women's Champion. There's also Allison Kay, who was the former Women's Champion. There's Marty Bell, a Dominican wrestler who has shown quite a bit of promise inside the ring. So when you think about it, the NWA really has slowly but surely made a strong comeback into the mainstream and is really starting to make themselves seen and heard. Now, as far as what else is going on in the world of sports, let me see if I can think. I've pretty much covered everything out there that needs to be covered. Well, didn't want to have to mention this, but it's been. Oh, I hear the phone ringing. Could it be that it's Hector Bosa that's calling us up right now? Well, we're going to wait on that in just a little bit. Anyway, it's been over a month since Kobe Bryant passed away, and the tributes continue to run rampant from all over the place. If you caught that 1 hour memorial that they had over at the Staples Center, it was so well broadcast and so beautifully arranged by everybody. Jimmy Kimmel was the master of ceremonies. And of course, those great speeches made by Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal, which really brought the house down. And of course, Kobe's widow, Vanessa, saying those words that still ring true to this day. Gianna, their daughter, who also passed away in that helicopter crash, Gianna's not going to have a wedding day. Gianna's not going to be graduating high school. It's just too difficult to try to talk about right now. I mean, it's gotten to the point where you can't help but shed a tear every time Kobe's name is being mentioned. So the only thing that we can do is remember the good times. Remember the good old days, and remember the good old days with a smile. Well, I just got a message from Hector saying that he's trying to call right now, so we're going to see if we can get the phones up and running right now. But in the meantime, I'm going to see if I can come up with more things for you to try and ponder. Well, I mentioned before that there have been rumors about excuse me, everyone. I've been telling you about the rumors of Tom Thibodeau returning as coach of the Knicks. Well, how about a Carmelo Anthony return to the Knicks for your viewing pleasure? At this rate, that sorry-ass franchise can try anything for all I care. I really don't care, to be honest with you. That franchise is just irrelevant. They're irrelevant to the city, and they're irrelevant to basketball. So I'm going to see if we can try and turn the page and discuss something a little bit more feasible, if you will. Well, on the bright side, the New York Liberty are going to be returning to the Barclays Center full-time this coming season, which means they'll be playing their home games in Brooklyn for good. And I think it's a tremendous idea. They were pretty much in limbo playing at the Westchester County Center, where they only drew about 1,500 fans a night. It's no way to try and operate a franchise by drawing 1,500 fans a night. I mean, you look at what the other franchises are doing, having their teams play home games on college campuses and whatnot. It's much better to try and operate that way in case you can strike up a deal with a particular college that they'll let you play your home games there. Well, we're still waiting on Hector. Well, we've pretty much covered everything that you need to cover, folks. So we're just going to wait on Hector to see if he could join us in the last 14 and a half minutes. And if not, we're going to try and come up with some other stuff to discuss. Okay, is he ready? Okay. Oh, it looks like he hung up. Well, we'll try again. All right. So in the meantime, are you there, Hector? Hector, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You sound really, really, really low, man. All right, much better. How about now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, good.
Go ahead.
All right.
Go on, Hector. Hector,
Yeah.
go right ahead.
Okay. What are we saying?
Well, I practically covered everything in a span of 40 minutes. If you want, you could just follow up on it.
Oh, yeah, because I didn't get quite to hear you because I'm here doing what I got to do. But I wanted to ask you because Carmelo Anthony coming back, you got a new GM, you have Tom Thibodeau may be the coach of the New York Knicks. So you got two people that may, you got one person that may come in because the top three are Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, and Tom Thibodeau, according to all the dirt sheets and everybody else that's writing. That's a sports writer at ESPN. Okay, good. And they're all talking and saying the same thing about how this one's going to do this. How do you project the Knicks? Where do you see the Knicks going?
In the toilet.
I understand that, but I'm talking about where do you think this guy's going, and what do you think who his next coach is? Do you think it's going to be Tom Thibodeau, or do you think it's going to be Mark Jackson? Because they keep on saying in various publications and radio stations that it's going to be Tom Thibodeau because he's close to this guy. And Tom Thibodeau last year or 2 years ago wanted to coach the Knicks or was involved or about to be a coach of the New York Knicks. He was one of the persons that interviewed for the Knicks job because he hasn't had the Knicks job. I mean, he hasn't had a job in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, forgetting everything that has happened with the Knicks because, they're an atrocious, in an atrocious management position. So, forgetting that part because you have to when it comes to them sometimes. Because if they're saying, okay, they're going to pick this GM and this coach, as long as he doesn't stick his nose into it, they're a good team.
Mm-hmm.
When James Dolan stuck his nose into it is when he traded half the team to get Carmelo Anthony. And that's what ruined the team, even though they did make the playoffs that 1 year with him. And then they're talking about, well, he didn't get along with Jeremy Lin, insanity. Carmelo was a ball hog. Amari Stoudemire, he kept on getting hurt. So how do you see with this new GM getting in there today, who's the next coach?
If they're sincere in their interest in Tom Thibodeau and they want to bring this guy in for an interview, and Thibodeau shows interest in this job, then you would have to bring this marriage together. As far as Carmelo Anthony's concerned, Carmelo's been around a long, long time. 16 years now. With a young team, with a group of young players like that team has right now, it could be that he might, emphasis on might, be able to tutor some of the young players on how to make things go. I just hope that it doesn't turn into another Jeremy Lin episode where he practically shunned the kid.
I know you can teach the people, but, you know, as one person said when I was hearing the, you know, one of those radio stations, it said, he was trying to, I'll put it to you this way, he's not Clyde Frazier, okay? He's not one of those kings that, or Patrick Ewing, you know,
no
that
way.
you hang his number up. You hang up his jersey. That's what the guy was saying. What did he do for the New York Knicks to say, let's bring the prodigal son home?
Aside from scoring a lot of points, nothing.
And the only thing he did was make the playoffs once in his tenure here. But if you think about it, because of stupid Dolan, because he wanted a star player here to try to be with Amari Stoudemire, think about it. If you had kept Coleman, Gallinari, and all them other people that they traded away, they would have made the playoffs at least 2 straight years because of the way they came out.
Mm-hmm.
In theory. In theory.
Yeah.
Because they did. Because look how their careers have gone. They have gone, the majority of the Knicks. Isn't it strange that when you're a Knick and you go to another team, the majority of the time you win a championship, but you can't win with your own team? And this other guy, the GM, he wants to get rid of the scouting. And I don't blame him, because the scouts are something else. We talked to one person that was a scout, and he didn't even know the Sumter's name.
Wow.
So whoever's in the scouting department, to me, it's always been bad. Just like the Mets. The Mets scouting department, or whoever's the physical doctor there, has always been bad. No matter who they bring in, they've always had bad luck with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they give praises so much to Allen Houston. To me, Allen Houston wasn't that good. But they praise Allen Houston as if he was the best thing since sliced bread.
He was a decent player, a good shooter, but a very streaky shooter.
Exactly. But the way he did do some milestones, but was he good? And that's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah, you do. Just because you reach milestones, does that mean that you're good? Or it just happened to be a milestone because you were the guy at the time, or you were the longest around? I mean, how does that work out? Because in baseball, it's the same way. If you do a 20-year span, not that they do that anymore, I don't think. But if you do a 20-year span and you do a certain achievement, more than likely, because you did 20 years, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where they're going, because let's say we do bring Carmelo Anthony, right? Just for the sake of giggles. Who are you picking in the draft? Because that's the smartest thing that they've done so far, is keep the drafts. Unless you're going to get Karl Anthony Towns and you have to give up 2 number ones plus whatever else, then you go for it.
Right.
But other than that, I'm looking forward to see who they draft. just like the Jets, just like the Giants, because the Giants, I've heard rumbles on the news and so forth that they may try to get another quarterback.
I have no idea why. Why?
So,
Daniel Jones is supposed to be the guy. If they turn around and get another quarterback, this guy better be really worth it, man, because they invested a high draft pick on Daniel Jones last year, and they caught a lot of heat for it. If they're going to draft a quarterback again, they're going to get roasted, probably more so this year than last year.
Yeah, but again, remember, new people, they want their own people in there. They want their own quarterback in there. They don't want what they're inherited sometimes. They want what they want, not what they're inherited. A lot of times. Look at the Jets' position with their running back. I'm hearing rumbles again how the GM is saying, well, we have to work with this. The coach has to work with him. He's one of the best running backs in the league. You know, forgetting the stupidity that he did, whatever for whatever reason why he did it. He did what he did. If the coach is going, well, I don't want him because he did what he did. But if the GM brings him in, you got to use him. You may not like him, but you got to use him. He's one of the best weapons you have. And if you open him up, your quarterback can throw to more people.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the way Eric Dickerson used to run. Look at the way Herschel Walker used to open up things. Give it to the running back, boom. You can start throwing it down the field more because they're more scared of the running back. They don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. Because I remember reading that they said that right now they weren't trying to trade him. They're running back from the Jets who the coach doesn't like. So you have the Giants controversy, if there's a controversy, by perhaps getting another quarterback. You have the running back from the Jets who the coach doesn't like, who the coach wants to get rid of because of personal issues, according to what you stated. And I think he don't like him, to me personally. But according to the reasons what you gave, and you got the Knicks in a melee because you got another coach coming in. And I don't know, what is it, 35 coaches so far? 20-something coaches so far, has it been?
Something like that, yeah.
And it's almost every 2 years. How are you going to progress with it? How are you going to do something every 2 years?
It's the Knicks. You can't.
You can't. It's unfathomable. But somehow they wind up doing it anyway.
Yep.
As soon as they go to a losing streak, it's the coach's fault. He lost the team. Dave Fitzgerald, what did you think about it? As a coach and as a human being?
He's still a good coach, but he was in the wrong place in the wrong time with the Knicks. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, so it looks like we're going to have to save this for next Monday.
All righty then.
All right, thanks a lot, Hector.
No
and
problem.
Thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass. For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
I'm Hector.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.